hope you all are having a wonderful evening and a great week so far. Welcome, of course, to Midnight Hatter Live, the weekly variety show where we talk Gundam, gaming, and Gunpla. I'm your host, Stephen Bayless, aka Midnight Hatter, and joining me as always, the Blue Gamer, Gundam Explainer, Adam Blue. How are you, man?
Hey, doing good. And so to let everyone know, if you haven't caught it yet, I finally caught Steven's Which for Mercury video. It's good stuff because this is that it's that type of content that even like I don't make. It's a little different, but it's so compelling. It even makes it to me. It almost makes it like they almost tried too hard with Witch for Mercury. It's like, "Okay, I see where you're going with all this, but can we rein it
100%.
in and make it make sense?" You know?
100%. Yeah. And that the sign off at the end of the video where I'm like, look, it was ambitious. That,
Yeah.
like, that's
Yeah.
the best thing you could say about it.
Ambition. Yeah,
Um,
that's true. Yeah.
well, thank you. You're making me blush. I mean, oh,
No. No, 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 but, for real, that's even sometimes with Star Wars, I don't think some commentary ever gets that and it's less about, "Oh, look, it's like this. Oh, no, it's like that." It's more about, can we maybe allow us to this will allow us to understand maybe the character motivations that might have not been properly portrayed because of trying to shoehorn these elements, even though that then makes sense. But it's an interesting type of deep dive where we're not just like assuming things, because you were able to bring elements that it was like obvious,
thank you. Thank
yeah.
you.
So
Yeah, I want to preface, of course, like, obviously didn't reference any production notes, didn't reference any interviews with the writers and stuff like that. So everything is like, I try to let the work speak for itself
yeah.
because ultimately, like, the idea of interviewing the creator is something that we have the privilege of in modern day, but like, you know, for Shakespeare, no one
Oh yeah.
interviewed Shakespeare and said, "Hey, what were you trying to say with this character?" kind of thing. So it's like you really do have to take the work at face value in order to derive what the meanings are. Um, and I say that, and I'm going to say that in the next installment, especially of the Witch from Mercury one, because it is going to be much more charged politically. I will say that. And again, it's not like, I try not to make value judgments about these things. I'm just like making
Yeah.
observations. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, very cool stuff. I actually, it was quite funny. I forget what the topic was over on the Discord, but someone was saying something along the lines of like, well, you'd have to have a literature degree to understand all of this stuff. And I was like, huh,
Yeah.
as it
Yeah,
turns out, I have
that's
one.
cool though. I think that's really cool. It's because, like, it matters and doesn't matter, right? Sometimes people gain enough experience through life where they can, and maybe you know them and so you trust them. But some people, it's like, do you that's like recently, I will, if someone criticizes me, I'll look them up, you know? And it's
Yeah.
like, okay, well, maybe this person comes from somewhere where they do know what they're saying to me. A lot of times it's not. But the
And
thing
that's,
about the literature degree, like, that's just on point. But I want to bring up something else.
oh, go for it.
Okay, you said something about with Shakespeare that there's not like any interviews. There's no like documents or manuscripts of, so that's kind of interesting because with all the different types of creators, you know, through history, that's an element that is missing, that like nowadays that's almost what people seek out because they can get it. But then some people take that too seriously where then they create this sort of relationship, parasocial relationship. But then sometimes I think the meaning of that is to, if you sometimes get an idea of where that person comes from, that helps better understand what type of myth maybe they were encoding in their work, not because it's a trick or a secret, but because it, by witnessing that, it's almost like you get a lot of information and then you can pass that story uh telling on. So anyway, you just, when you brought that concept up, it just made me think of all the lost information through history.
Yeah,
Um
I mean, can you imagine, and especially for Gundam fans, right? Because Yoshiyuki Tomino is famously a curmudgeon who does not like Gunpla fans, and he's made some kind of wild and preposterous statements about what he was trying to do with Gundam over the years, over the last 45 years. And Tomino now obviously is not the same person he was when he was 37 years old in 1979, so
Right.
it's hard to get back in that frame of mind, and so you almost can't trust him, as far as literary devices go, if you've ever heard of the unreliable narrator,
Oh, yeah.
somebody who's compromised mentally or has a skewed perspective on events, they are not going to be trustworthy. And so to that end, like you said, there's this lost information that could have come from, if Shakespeare had a Twitter account, and I'm sure that there's probably some people that have had a fun, like,
Yeah.
"Oh, what,"
Parody.
Shakespeare verified on Twitter, and he posts all the time about, like, "You guys just don't get, uh, Hamlet," like, it's
Well, have you seen that Rick and Morty TikTok where Rick and Morty are explaining the point of Gundam?
I haven't.
It's pretty funny because it's like, Morty's like, "Well, what is it about?" And he's like, "Well, Morty," and then he goes into the whole thing of like but like in detail about what it's really about, child soldiers, war is bad, blah, 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 and it goes really, really deep, but then by the end of it, I'm like, while that's true, it's actually when you watch it, it's not like that's a hidden or deep message. They are
No.
talking and you bring this up too, they talk about it immediately. Like, even when, Bright goes to visit, Captain,
Or Tim
I
Ray?
don't huh?
Or when
Who
when he's talking to
at the
Tim
beginning
Ray
when he
and,
sees
like
the picture and he's like, "Oh, the kids are" oh, yeah,
yeah, like,
Tim
"Oh,
Ray.
I hope that there's
That's
not
right.
I hear that there's kids my son's age fighting," yeah.
Yep. Like, they're already telling you guys this is pretty scary, and then everything else that happens in that. So, uh, I I don't know how much then one of those TikToks are for people that just, they never watched it.
Yeah,
So then
well,
they're just, you
a
know
and, like, how much of that was inspired by the Alex Jones telling the story of the Star Wars prequels meme, which, like, that is hilarious if you
Oh,
haven't
I
seen it.
haven't seen that. That sounds amazing.
Oh my gosh, yeah,
I've seen him
Emperor Palpatine was a senator from a small planet called Naboo, and he funds a terrorist attack on Naboo, and he claims he's a pacifist. He catapults himself into the leadership role, and the whole thing's geopolitical.
wow, dude, that was good. Just the way he did his you're good at those voices.
Yeah, the most sincere form of flattery, I hope. Um, but yeah, actually, funny enough, I posted an Alex Jones meme last week that really took off
Yes,
on Twitter, so that was
I
funny as
know.
well.
If you guys
Gundam
haven't
themed.
checked it out, head over to there. That's like one of those memes are just perfect, and it just works.
Yeah,
But you had to think and select, like, not only am I doing this meme, but you have to do it justice with each character. You know what
I
I mean?
I caught a lot of flack for my 0079 version. Everyone loves the Zeta version, but the 0079 version, I caught a lot of heat for. So I don't know. You guys check it out. Comment what you would do. What you would do differently. I might
Next
do
level.
more of those because 'cause they're just fun. Like,
Yeah. It is.
What it really happened this past weekend, which was spectacular. Well, so first of all, you dropped a video today that
Oh,
was
yeah.
a recap from last week. We were talking about the new additions to the Gundam movie,
Right.
and I'm really excited to see Jason Clark in a role, any role. We'll
No, but it in a role and a
in a
role. Yeah,
role.
that's pretty good. But you know what's interesting is, lately I found value into taking segments out of the podcast. This is some inside stuff because sometimes a podcast episode will only get a couple hundred views. But,
Right.
like, if I make it a clip out of a segment and put a thumbnail, it will be way more people. And I know people are interested in the movie news, and I want people to know they can come to me for the movie news, so
You've got the movie news. And
yep.
you know what? I'm probably gonna do that same thing with tonight's stream because the big news coming out of Las Vegas this past weekend is not Valentine's Day, it's Gundam Assemble Day. Um,
Oh, good call.
they featured, at the Las Vegas Gundam Car Games Show, the first opportunity for people to play the Gundam Assemble miniatures game. I have some photos here, some of them shared by Ultronymous, who I see you in chat. Shout out to Ultronymous for providing some details. I've got some other images, and I've got some images of the rule book and what the sort of flow of combat is. So we're gonna take a look at that, offer our opinions on it, and I hope you guys will, tell us what you think as well because I love miniatures games. Obviously, I collect the Gundam Assemble miniatures. I got the ones from the card game set. That was honestly the thing I was most excited about with the card
Yeah.
game. And already I've started, putting LEDs in them and painting them and
Huh.
having a blast with that. But now that we're starting to get the full sets, um, yeah, I think it's gonna be a lot of fun.
Okay, so 2 things. 1, when you start the segment, let me know because then I will be able to tell myself, "Okay, Adam, minimize the time and let Steven have his flow." And number 2, when I look at the, play mats there, and I don't know if you're showing it yet, but the are you showing it yet? Because if not, I'm gonna wait.
Not yet. How
Okay,
about okay, so
yeah,
let's start the segment here. Let's take a look at Gundam Assemble, the tabletop miniatures game featuring Gundam mobile suits.
nice.
All right, Adam, please share your first impressions from the tabletop setups here.
Okay, so I don't know if you'll get this, I think you will, but when I look at the way the layout is, like, even those, whatever makes the, elevation, it reminds me of playing in a map in 0081.
Yeah.
Doesn't it look like
Wow.
it?
Wow.
Just the way, like, because it's kind of consistent, uh, hills that you jump on or
Yeah.
throughout, and it's like it's laid out just like that.
In fact, I know exactly which map you're talking about in 0081 where it's like the gulch. It's like that long canyon.
Oh, yeah.
And the entire level is just you kind of boosting around and jumping around. That is such an awesome connection that I did not make.
I think it's
That's
cool that
classic
when
PS3 graphics.
yeah, oh, yeah, not PS3 graphics, no, but that's cool. But yeah,
Um, so yeah, as you guys can see here, it is a hexagon, battle mat, and it looks like they have these sort of constructible breakdown elevation terrain type tiles. So it looks
right,
like they're made up of like 4 pieces of cardboard that kind of fold in on themselves, and it looks like you can have multiple levels of elevation here as you can see, um,
yeah.
which is kinda cool, and it looks like there's even tokens on top of them kind of representing whether there's, special map effects, things like that come into play. It's a pretty cool layout, like you can tell that earlier when they were kind of just announcing the game last year, they had a couple of hexagon maps that were flat, and then they had a couple of, like, diorama style 3D terrain. I don't think at the time they knew exactly which direction they were gonna go with it, and so now it seems like they are focused, they have a decided direction that they're going in.
I like it, and it stands out too. Like, it's
Yeah.
almost like you could look at that so far, there might be different biomes, but it's like that stands out.
Yeah, I mean, desert is always a popular one in Gundam. I
Yeah.
mean, you've got it in Zeta, Double Zeta, the
Yep.
original 0079. Is there a Gundam series that doesn't have a desert battle?
No, I think that's just one of those hallmark, scenes that you're gonna have
It's a staple.
yep.
Yeah, it does remind me a bit of, like, Heroescape, my favorite tabletop miniatures game where you had to construct the map out of hexagon tiles, and so you had physical elevation going on. Obviously, this is a little bit quicker to set up than building tiles of
Oh, yeah.
terrain for an hour before you play for 20 minutes. Um,
Good call.
it's cool
And then
that they
there's the
set up
Nintendo
the
Switch right there in the middle. I don't know.
Yeah, you've got your Joy-Cons. Each player gets a Joy-Con to, control their mobile suits with.
Oh, okay, that's cool, actually. But yeah.
It looks like they supplied them with this little dice pool rolling tray, which is kinda cool, and the dice inside you can't see from this photo, but there's another photo that we're gonna look at. The dice used for the game are D10s, which is an interesting choice. Um, so D10s, obviously 10-sided dice. Most tabletop games go for, like, the D6, the traditional, like, six-sided die, or if it's a tabletop role-playing game, you're gonna look at, like, a D20, so the 20-sided
Hmm,
die. D10, the only things I know of that use that are, like, Call of Cthulhu, but and I've seen some people
hmm.
dropping, Warhammer 40K references in chat, and I've never played 40K. Have you?
No, but I've seen it when I've gone to, like, the Gundam Cafe and the people set up all the tables are set up, and it looks way more diorama-like. Oh,
Yes, that uses, like, real scenery, and you have to, like, measure your shots and everything, yeah.
yep, that's cool.
Um, so let's take a look at the rules here, hopefully, we'll be able to read them. Now, Adam, have you read any of the rules through yet?
I have not, I was waiting for this moment.
Ah, beautiful. So, your turn structure, you have 4 different moves that you can perform on your turn, and each one you get to do once and in any order. So, A is movement, so you can move up to a total of 3 hexes from your current space. That's pretty cool. You cannot pass through hexes that occupy enemy units, garrisons, or enemy objectives. It is possible to pass through units or pass through hexes that are occupied by allied units. That's a pretty typical rule, right? Your B primary action. This is probably your most flexible action because obviously you have 4 choices within option B, which you can attack. Cost is listed on the weapon type, and attack targets are within the weapon range. That stuff is on the card, your unit card. We'll go over that in just a second. Dash, which costs 2 timeline. Again, that's going to be on the card. We'll talk about that in a second. Allows you to move 2 additional hexes. So that's kind of like your sprint if if
Oh,
you're like a Halo 4 guy. Um, Energize, which again costs 2 timeline, allows you to acquire 1 energy token, which is kind of silly to me. It kind of sounds like some Dragon Ball Z stuff where you power up for a turn. I don't know.
yeah.
And then rescue, which is a primary action, costs 2 timeline, and you can rescue an allied garrison that is in an adjacent hex and acquire 2 victory points for doing so. Victory points are important. We're going to talk about that as well. Obviously, victory points does what it sounds like. It
Oh,
gets you closer to
cool.
victory. The other thing that you can do on your turn is use a unit's ability. If there is an energy that's noted in the ability, it requires the energy charge to use. So that's where that energy charge comes up. It's like, oh, well, if you're going to do this thing, then you have to charge it up for the turn prior, which makes sense. And finally, you have tactics cards, which are individual. You can use an individual tactics card. Only one card can be used per turn, and it cannot be used if one was already used in response to an opponent's attack in the previous turn. That seems like a very specific scenario in which there are probably tactics cards that operate kind of like a counterattack where it's, if your enemy attacks you, it's like, "Oh, yeah, that won't work for you, Kaiba, because of my trap card. I deflect your attack." Um, and if you do that, you can't use the tactics card on your turn.
Hmm.
So, interesting stuff there. Again, we're gonna look at some examples of that here in just a moment. So far, what do you think of the turn structure?
I don't know yet because, I haven't really played many of these, like, action-based, tabletop games of figurines. I played Life, Sorry, but yeah. No, so this is cool to me, but I'm also thinking sort of like in terms of, any of the turn-based video games that I've played where there is, these resource factors to keep in mind.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. This stuff's a lot easier to track in those types of games, like an XCOM
Yep.
or even SD
SD.
Gundam G
Yep.
Generation. Like, it's like you think about a lot of these effects really exist in
Yeah.
SDG Generation Eternal, right? It's like you move, you have unit abilities that you can use, you have the tactics card, which to me is kind of like the supporter ability.
Yeah.
Um, and then your primary action, where it's like, you can attack, you can do like an effect, something like that.
And Energize is almost that, that buff that what happens depending on your attack,
Yeah,
and maybe it's not something you can add on, but it's a concept,
exactly. There's a shared DNA
yeah.
to this. So your attack sequence goes like this. Step 1, select the weapon to use and a target. Like I said, we're going to take a look at a unit card in a minute. You actually do have multiple weapons on individual units. Unfortunately, it's not customizable the way that like Warhammer is, where it's like if you put a
Mm,
bolt gun on one guy's arm, he gets to have a bolt gun. It's like, no, the Gundam gets this, this, and this. Zaku's get this, this, and this. That's
Okay.
no customization in sight. Unless you want to. If you want to customize the figure, that's fine, but, like,
Yeah.
card is gonna be the same. Number 2, line of sight check. This is kind of interesting because, again, this kind of harkens back to that, HeroScape and also, like, 40K Battletech type thing, because most, like, grid-based combat games, there's really not a lot that can interfere with your line of sight. But since we have elevated terrain, since we have things that can block your vision to enemy units, line of sight is very important. So when attacking at a range of 2 or more, you have to check if you have line of sight. And obviously, you'll see we get down to that in just a second here. If the line of sight is clear, you pay the cost, you make your attack. Here is where things get interesting, is when we actually roll the dice. You actually have to roll multiple dice here. So your hit check, you have to roll a 4 or higher to hit, which gives you a pretty high percentage of hitting because, 6 out of 10, if you roll, well, no, it would be 7 out of 10, right? Because it's like, if you roll a 1, 2, or 3, you miss. If you roll 4, 5,
Yeah.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10, that's
I like that. This goes back to the video games or what's really determining a miss, but I like that. Yeah.
and honestly, one of the things that I think a lot of people miss is that when you're playing games, it feels good to hit. Like,
Yeah.
you
It
know,
does.
one of the things that's kind of frustrating about like D&D 3.5 is, there's a lot of occasions where you just miss. And so you're waiting for your turn to come
Oh,
around the table and you roll to attack and it's like miss. All right, I guess I got to wait another 10 minutes to go around the table. Like, that's a very unsatisfying thing. It's better to hit and not do enough damage to kill than it is to not hit, but then when you do hit, it's more satisfying.
yeah.
At least in a gamer's mind, the
No, that's
gamer
true.
psychology. Critical attacks. Boom. If you roll a 9 or 10, you get a critical hit, which critical effects are triggered. Those are, again, denoted on the cards. Rolls of a 1 are a missed attack regardless of
Oh,
accuracy modifiers. So that's very interesting. So the attack itself has modifiers to it. So it's like, man, if you're rolling a d10 and you only have to roll a 4 or higher to hit, and then you also get like, what if there's a +2 modifier? Then it's
right.
literally like if you roll a 1, that's the only way you can miss. Kind of satisfying.
Yeah.
And then finally, damage. Determine the number of hits, add critical effects, and deduct shields to calculate damage. So it sounds like you actually roll multiple dice per attack. And so
Yeah.
you might have multiple hits per attack. That's kind of cool. Here we have our line of sight check. Obviously, you can't attack through an elevated terrain. This is cool. Obviously, if you have high ground, you can attack downward, but not if it is 2 stages up. So if you're 1 stage up, you can still hit,
Oh,
but if you're 2 steps up, you can't hit.
okay.
Um, in this example, both players have line of sight because Char's Zaku 2 hex has higher elevation than the Gundam, but the line drawn from the Gundam does not pass through another hex with higher elevation. So, yeah, that's interesting. So it's like, as long as there's not an elevation terrain in between you 2, you can attack somebody that's on higher elevation than you.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Even across it looks like from that, it could even be across a few, I guess, depending on the range.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one that doesn't make sense to me is this last one. So in the final example, it looks like there's a piece of terrain, or no, that's a unit in between the 2. Okay, so this makes sense. In this example, if the Gundam wishes to attack Sharazaku 2, a line between the units passes through a hex occupied by the Gundam Vidar, which is another enemy unit. So you can attack through friendly units, but you cannot attack through enemy units.
Huh.
That can be
Okay.
pretty dangerous because it's like if you surround an enemy unit, you can basically like gang up on him,
Oh,
which that's kind of how it happens, right?
yeah. Hmm.
Very cool.
It seems action packed. Like I wonder if it's either the games go quickly or it's more of there's consistent action
the
quick. Yep.
pace feels very fast, and again, this is all speculation because I didn't go to Las Vegas this weekend,
Yeah.
and my wife would have killed me if I spent Valentine's Day playing tabletop
Oh.
games.
I just I know you mentioned that before, but now it really just put it together. How many guys that would have gone to this didn't?
Exactly
I
right.
mean, you gotta really like, you can't blame a guy if he had to choose between Valentine's with the wife or going to Vegas for a card or a tabletop game, like, that is tough.
Married guy problems, am I right?
Yeah.
So here we have a look at I'm gonna do like a little moderate zoom here. So this is the next page of the rule book where we get to look at the unit card in particular. So obviously, we've got the Gundam in here, and we've got some stats that we can observe. Whoa, let's zoom out a little bit from there. So reading from top left onward, we've got the HP of the unit, so 11. You have to deal 11 damage to the Gundam to knock it out. Victory points. This is very cool because you earn a particular amount of victory points for defeating that unit. I imagine if you're fighting against a, bog standard Leo, you're going to get like 2 victory points, but if you take down a Gundam, you get 5 victory points, which is cool that you get more credit for taking down bigger, badder enemies. Um, Timeline starting position, number 2. So this is an interesting one because the whole concept of the timeline thing is kind of an interesting gameplay mechanic. There's obviously a cost associated with it, and then it actually, increments as the game goes on, and we'll talk about that here in just a second as well. We have, like, obviously Gundam, the name, the picture, uh but then here we have a couple of tags that are listed. So tagged with Amuro Ray and Earth Federation. There's probably tags associated with like the card abilities and other unit abilities where it's like, oh, offer a buff to all Earth Federation units within 3 hexes or what have you. So that's kind of cool. Now we have our 2 attacks that the Gundam comes with, the beam saber and the beam rifle. Looks like I can't quite read it, but the timeline cost with the beam saber is 2, the range is 1, obviously, you have to be adjacent to them, and then damage is 2. But it has a critical effect that, turn a strength upgrade burn a strength upgrade? Turn a strength
Yeah,
upgrade?
I'm not sure what that
Turn a
says.
Gundam? I don't know. Um So you
Right.
do get a critical effect on the beam saber. The beam rifle costs 4 timeline to use, has a range of 4 hexes, and deals 5 damage. And on a critical, it deals what looks like an extra 2 damage um, on top of the flat 5. And if you can't read or whatever, it's actually got the range right here where you can see that there's 1 hex away and 4 hexes away.
Oh, okay. I was
Pictures.
wondering what that was, but
Give
oh,
it
that's
give
cool.
it pictures, right?
Yeah.
And then finally here at the bottom of the card, we've got the abilities, skills, the things that, energy is required to use. So white base unity is one of the skills here. It looks like it costs I can't see how many energy, but it is a command effect. Um, if another allied unit within range 3 hexes or fewer um, upgrades an upgrade of your choice. I'm not sure.
Yeah. I
Oh,
think
so if they have 1 or fewer upgrades equipped, you can add an upgrade of your choice. Okay.
oh, okay.
And then new type instincts, which let's see what this is. After an attack roll, something an attacker one I you guys,
Yeah.
that is low res. I cannot quite make out what that does. But
Uh,
you get the idea. Every card has a cost, an HP, victory points for beating it, attacks, which are translated as weapons, and then abilities. And each one has a cost associated with using it.
Okay, it's like
Next, we
running
have
that, card game all over again.
yeah, right. We've got the whole all of it right here. Um, What's interesting is, like, the tactics cards do bear a similarity in the design and the effect to the command cards from the Gundam card game, which is
Mm.
kinda cool.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm not sure how many are in the deck, but, you shuffle your tactics card deck, and after shuffling, you draw the first 3 cards to form your hand. Don't show your opponent, obviously, and then draw 3 additional cards at the start of phase 2. Interesting. So these command cards obviously, or tr see, I'm in Gundam card game mode where I'm talking about command cards. The tactics
Oh,
cards, so here's where that trait tag comes in. So you have to have a compatible mobile suit that can use that tactics card. So it looks like, for instance, this one is probably a white base or Earth Federation tagged tactics card,
yeah.
and when you play it, it has whatever effect is written on the card. Kinda cool.
Yeah.
Finally, we have the timeline track, the old Nintendo Switch. Um,
I know, it's crazy.
the unit with the lowest, so this is where the victory points come into play, I guess, is like, yeah, you're kind of racing to get to the far end of the victory point count area, right?
Hmm.
The unit with the lowest timeline takes its turn. In the case of same timeline value, choose a unit from the side that did not have the most recent turn. So it sounds like the better a unit is doing, the further down the pecking order it goes, which is kind of an interesting way of doing it. So it's like a momentum killer in a way because, if your Gundam is acquiring lots of victory points and is going up the timeline track, then it's gonna act later in the timeline.
Yeah, I'm curious about this. There had to be a reason they came up with this.
Exactly. One of the there's always a reason behind every mechanic, right?
Yeah.
Proceed through at actions such as attack, dash, energize, rescue, etc. A turn cannot finish without advancing the timeline. A phase is completed once the timeline has been advanced through once, 10 rounds.
Hmm.
Interesting. So does that mean that an entire game is 10 rounds, or is there something else, you know?
Yeah, I'm curious.
Here we have some status effects. This is kind of cool. I love this type of stuff, and I like when it is standardized like this, where I don't like having um bespoke effects that are applied to units where it's like, well, that one has a plus minus slow to this, and this. I like when things are quite simple and
Oh,
just
yeah.
quick. So it's like disarm, one time only. When making the next attack roll, roll attack dice, and then any dice that scored a hit, critical effects are not. Re-roll any dice that scored a hit, critical effects are not triggered. So that's kind of cool. That's pretty.
Yeah.
That's pretty crippling if you think about it. Like, you're basically, you roll, and then any hits that you get, you have to re-roll. Um, Fracture is a one-time only effect. If you take more than 3 damage in a single attack, you receive an additional 3 damage, so that can be crippling as well.
Yeah.
Slow, one time only. On the next turn, basic movement cannot be used. Pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
So if you apply any of these effects to your enemy units, obviously there's some
And when
pretty.
it says basic movement cannot be used, could you dash?
That's a good question. I think
Hmm.
they need some errata there to, like, specify, like,
But I
can you
wonder if
still
that's how you
dash
get
the
out of
extra.
that, depending on how it works, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I wonder if there's counters for these.
Well, I'm glad you
Oh.
mentioned that because you've got the upgrade tokens, and this was, mentioned in the earlier Gundam white base unity effect, right? So when you complete a move or dash onto a hex with an upgrade token, reveal the token, place it on the unit's unit card, and it will have an upgrade for an attack, movement, shield displayed on the token for the rest of the game. So this is kind of cool because I imagine you're going to randomly place these tokens face down. You don't know what you're going to get, but it's almost like a race to grab these upgrades before the enemy units do.
Grabbing upgrades. I know with in 0081, I had to refuel, get my ready to get back to the
Exactly
base.
right. Um, So very interesting. Again, the timeline track mechanic seems that's probably the most unorthodox thing that I've seen so far from
Yeah.
what we're gleaning here. Um, and then the next couple of images that I have are not particularly specific. It looks like they gave a PDF to the participants. This looks like a phone screenshot. So, like, you have this introduction to tactical warfare, core components and setup, turn structure. It's actually pretty straightforward when you look at it this way, right? Like, Gundam Assemble is a hex-based competitive miniatures game focused on timeline control, elevation dominance, and VP optimization. Don't know what VP means, but we're going to hopefully
Victory
find out.
points.
Core components 3 to 6 units per player, timeline tokens, energy tokens, status markers, upgrade tokens, tactics decks, D10 dice, objectives, and hex terrain. Timeline system mastery. The lowest timeline activates, all actions advance the timeline. Efficient play equals more activations.
Hmm.
Turn structure: one movement, one primary action, one ability, one tactics card per activation in any order. So it seems like the more you do, the more you can race up the timeline.
Yeah.
Movement and elevation: 3 hexes plus one movement per elevation change. High ground grants line of sight advantage. We saw that earlier. Water and terrain is plus one movement entering water, minus one accuracy when attacking from or into water. That's a cool touch. I love
Mhm.
when there's like, terrain bonuses and penalties um, for just occupying. And obviously, I imagine that one of the abilities of like a Zegok is going to be that it doesn't have to
Oh,
pay the plus one movement penalty for entering water, right? Or maybe it
right.
doesn't have to pay the minus one accuracy.
Yeah, no, that's
Um,
cool.
Primary actions, obviously attack dash, energize and rescue. Combat sequence: declare, line of sight, roll your d10s, +4 to hit, 9, 10 is critical, 1 is a miss, damage equals hits plus critical minus shields. Okay.
Hmm.
Line of sight is blocked by higher elevation, enemy units, enemy objectives. Allies do not block line of sight. We covered that earlier. Status effects: disarm, reroll, hits, no crit. Fracture is +3 damage. Um, and then slow is no basic move. All right. And then let's take a look at page 2 of this guy. We've got our upgrade tokens, which landing grants permanent bonus to attack, movement, or shield. Energy management: abilities cost 1 energy, balance energizing with tempo. Victory conditions: score victory points via destruction, rescue, objectives, scenarios. Highest victory points wins. Pretty straightforward there.
Yeah,
Competitive tempo: plan for 2 to 3 activations ahead, avoid timeline spikes. Interesting.
yeah.
Elevation domination: secure high ground early. Anakin, I'm looking at you.
Okay, that was an obvious one, I missed it.
Tactical deck play: trait tag synergy, 1 tactics card per turn. Defensive play: use shields and angles. Force poor trades. Advanced line of sight angles: use diagonal hex positioning to limit return fire. Tournament prep: practice timed rounds. Competitive doctrine: control the timeline, control elevation, control victory points.
Okay.
There you go.
Timeline. I still think that's very interesting. Is it because you can possibly use other universes together?
Well, it seems to me like the timeline is like kind of a sliding scale that advances the rounds, and
Right.
so certain things have timeline costs that will bring your unit back further down the timeline. So it's like,
Well, I wonder if just to name it that just to make it relevant in some way. You know what I mean? Because why timeline other than they're just literally saying next move, next move. I don't know. I don't know.
it is an interesting mechanic.
Yeah.
Yeah, so give me your first impressions now that we've kind of walked through the rules and have a basic understanding of the gameplay flow.
I like how fast paced it seems, like how there's those like three different actions apparently you could take, or was it four? The move, no, yeah, move, attack, tactical. Was there something else?
Energize and revive, so you can
Okay,
restore it,
okay.
yeah,
Okay, so, yeah, I like that there's a lot you could do, um, in each turn, and so that kinda shows again, we're talking about the dice, the D10, but then how 4 and up does it so it really seems like an action heavy, where
yeah,
it's like the turn of the tide could be where you just roll that one, and it's like, "Oh."
exactly.
Yeah.
And it the gameplay kind of reminds me of something like Doom, where it's like you get rewarded for being more aggressive. Like
Oh, you mean Doom, 2016?
yeah,
Oh, okay, where yeah, it's the games want you to constantly keep going forward,
right,
pretty much,
yeah,
yeah.
they do not want you to slow down and play it safe, they want you to be aggressive, they want you
Yeah,
to attack,
interesting, yes.
um, now
'Cause,
there
yeah.
is it looks like some positional advantages that you can have, obviously, with elevation, with upgrades, and positioning your units in such a way. I mean, imagine if you had a unit that had a high defensive value and you basically used it as your blocker, and then you've got your attacker behind, and you're kind of just using this wall unit
Yeah.
to
That's what I was thinking, if they didn't have this sort of timeline concept, people would kinda just, like, bunch up just as they move around the map, and it would be hard to really make sure everyone's doing an action, you
right.
know? So yeah, it kinda keeps it moving forward, yeah.
Yeah, and it seems like once 'cause it says highest victory points wins, but it's not like you're competing to get to a certain number of victory points. At the end of the timeline, it's whoever has the most victory points at the end of the timeline wins.
Yeah,
So, there's a there's like an advantage in performing lots of actions, defeating a lot of enemies in order to secure more victory points, and then the faster you get to the end of the timeline, the faster you can say, I have the most victory points because I did the most things.
right. Yeah, it's pretty neat. That is very much a Doom tabletop game.
Yeah, this is pretty fascinating. I'm curious about like cost, like unit cost, because obviously it said that your team could consist of 3 to 6 units, which to me
Mhm.
sounds perfect for mobile suits because I'm
Yep.
not like, coming from a UC background, I prefer the small squads of like
Mhm.
3 to 4 mobile suits taking on each other as opposed to like the mass scale battles of like a Dynasty Warriors Gundam, you
Oh,
know,
right,
or like
right.
Gundam 00 where it's like, "We're gonna fight 1,000 mobile suits."
I know, yeah, I love that stuff, but yeah, I know what you mean. You see, especially those units kinda lend itself,
Yeah,
especially that terrain too. Yeah.
definitely. So do you see yourself do you see yourself collecting any of these, small Gundam Assemble miniatures? Like I said, obviously, I am a fan. I've got my
Yeah.
collection here. I'm making duplicates of them because I need an army. But do you see yourself, A, collecting the miniatures, the mini Gunpla, and B, trying the game out?
I do. I think once I hear that people are picking it up in their areas or whatever, at their comic shops, I think I'm gonna go and see, what there is and the price and all that. I mean, the hard thing would be getting people to play it. There's
Right.
no one around me. I could try to see if my family would be interested, but people are gonna be like, "Gundam? Just because it's Gundam?"
Really?
No, but, I don't know, I'm really curious to hear see, and here's the thing, as much as I keep up with Gundam stuff, I feel like the tabletop stuff hasn't bled over into my realm of research yet, like, or what
Yeah.
people are talking about all the time. I think because it's mainly the people that went to Vegas, and then I guess until it gets released, when is that supposed to be that it comes out?
So there's supposed to be a big announcement in March regarding
Okay.
the official release date. So I think that we're probably looking at a late summer, early fall. Honestly, very similar to the timeline with the Gundam card
Card game.
game.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. Yeah, so there's still some time. It's interesting how these things move so slow, and I don't even know about the card game, like, if that has been working out and
I mean, they've planned out, like, a few phases ahead, and the new type challenge tournaments have been going on pretty strong. I am
Cool.
fortunate that even though I have not been able to purchase any more cards or participate in any of the events, my coworker, who is
Oh,
way
yeah.
more into card games, even last weekend, he was at one of the new type challenge events, and he was describing that one of the most exciting things about this new set release, like this new set of cards that's come out, is that the meta so far, at least where he's been in the tournaments that he's played in, has been very wing heavy. It's like all green decks, they're all just like attack, attack, attack.
Huh.
That's been the real
Oh,
the winning strategy.
wing, huh.
And he's more of like a command style player. He likes to ping, he likes to, deal damage and stall and then drop his main unit at the end, like late game,
Oh,
which there hasn't been a lot of support for. The best that we've had has been like the white decks, like with the Ostacassia Academy units.
oh, okay.
But now what you're seeing is that there's more mechanics and there's more variety in deck style. So the game has actually become more interesting now that there are more play styles, that not everybody is just doing the same wing deck.
Right, yeah.
And it's going to get even more exciting because they're adding more mechanics to it. So even though Zeta was in the dual impact booster set, they did not feature any of the units that have funnels, particularly the Cubile.
Okay.
Well, now the Cubile is coming out, and funnels are like a whole mechanic into themselves, which
Oh, that's
is
cool. That's
pretty freaking cool. So yeah, I mean, I like when, well, so it's a mixed bag, right? There's a fine balance of when you get a game to the point where there's enough variety in play styles that there's no clear meta that's like, oh, this is the way to play this game. But then you get to the power creep point where then all of the old cards or all the old units are no longer viable because the new stuff just completely
yeah.
overpowers them. Um, it seems to me like the Gundam card game is in that sweet spot. There's probably going to be a, you know, an easy meta for when the Gundam Assemble game comes out. But what's exciting about it is these scenario plays. So again, this is something that's like goes back to like Heroescape, where you would have the second master set of Heroescape was called something like the Marrow Hive, something like that, and it came with this big like egg. um, and,
Okay.
and I have to. I'm gonna pull this stuff up for you guys because oh man,
Yeah,
like
'cause, otherwise, I think you're making this up. I've heard of hero escape, but now you're talking about a giant egg. I
yeah. Um, so let's take a look at our units here. Um, Let me pull up the screen share again. So here's our Google image results. So this is the Marrow Hive, which is this came with a specific starter set, right? And what was interesting about it is that it was like a structure. Oh, so here it is. Yeah, the Swarm of the Marrow Master set.
yeah,
So
that's
it
cool.
came with this like fixed structure, the Marrow Hive. And what was cool about it is that when it stayed in play, it would it would keep spawning enemy units. And so the only way to win the scenario was to take out the hive.
Oh, that's
Um
cool.
yeah, and then like there was like terrain bonuses that the Marrow get. Marrow is kind of a cool name for like demonic zombie.
Yeah, that is.
uh but yeah, so this was one of those cool things that you could do, and then there was, like, some other scenarios where it was, like, a minotaur that guards a bridge, and it's like the way that you win the battle is to get past the bridge. It doesn't necessarily matter if you beat the minotaur, obviously, that
Hmm,
is feels good, but you're not expected to. The idea with tabletop miniatures games is that you can have these types of scenarios,
yeah.
and I don't think that you can do that with a card game. So yeah, I expect there to be lots of these types of scenarios to play out where a meta doesn't really play into it. Obviously, with competitive play, there's always going to be power gamers that are like, how can I optimize the fun out of this game and make it so that I always win? um,
Right,
but
right.
for these types of, games, I think it's more fun to do this type of scenario stuff. This is a beautiful squad here, 30 piece. This is on eBay? I might have to buy this.
That's cool.
I mean, this is like a full Utgar squad that's got, like, the Marrow rider here, it's got some orcs in here, it's got some what are those, samurai? Yeah, the Tokugawa
Wow.
samurai, some dragons. This unit here that I'm looking at, the top left with the dinosaur that's got an orc riding him,
Yeah,
that unit was so ridiculously broken, it came out in the starter set, and it had a special ability where you roll I think it was you roll a D20, and on a 19 or 20, you can just bite the head off of any adjacent figure. It was like
that's cool.
so you just one hit kill anything that's next to you, regardless of how much HP it has.
Wow. No, that's cool. What
Um
what would be a good, scenario for the Gundam game? Would it be like, the Battle of Abaku? And would there be like a Big Zam
Yeah, yeah, I
structure?
think that would be awesome, like, and I would even do it kind of like Hero Clicks where, like, let's see, Hero Clicks Galactus. I have this figure in my
Oh,
garage, but I'm just gonna pull up the picture because,
that's cool.
um so here is the Hero Clicks Galactus figure. Obviously, it is massive compared to all of the other tiny little Hero Clicks figures.
Yeah.
What was interesting about him is he has one dial that is his, like, health dial, but then he has 3 dials that are easy, medium, and difficult. And he basically every turn, you would turn that dial and he would do a bunch of actions. So he had, like, an AI built into the figure
Oh,
because it was
wow.
designed to be played as, like, a PvE campaign where it was like, "You guys build your team of 300 points, and then you team up against Galactus. And if you don't beat him within, I think it's like 10 turns, then you lose." That having a Big Zam version of this would be amazing, where it's like, "Okay, here's your Big Zam." You know, you have your timeline, right? Because like, the timeline advances
Oh, okay.
regardless. So, if
Yeah.
you have the timeline and you have to have more victory points at the end of beating the Big Zam than the Big Zam has beating you,
Yeah, dude, this is pretty intriguing. So what, you'd sit there with your brother or your friend and then just on the table and be like, "All right, let's see if we could take him out in 10 turns?"
let's do it. Yeah, that
But,
was it.
like, how easy was it?
The hard version was very hard, um, just because, like, y you have less turns to do it, and the, attacks that he gets are much more, like, punchy,
Okay.
and of course, like, this is where tabletop games are kind of iffy because it's like, the way we always played it is he would just attack the closest character to him, but strategically speaking, it would make more sense for him to attack particular characters, right? So it's like so we almost did a thing where it was like every turn that Galactus got to take, one of us would get to pick, like, who his attack targets were and, like, what his strategy was gonna be that turn to make sure that not one of us was gonna, like, you know,
Wow,
"Well, I'm just
okay.
gonna wipe out your team and then I'm gonna win," like, you know? Not that it would work that way anyway, because it's like you kinda needed everybody to collaborate to win,
Oh,
so
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 that's
that's the
cool then.
one downside, I think, is that there wasn't like a it's still dumb AI compared to what I think, honestly, we could achieve with actual AI. Like,
Yeah,
what I think we need to see in tabletop games, and I know that there's gonna be a lot of pushback to this, but imagine a LLM companion app where, you know, you took maybe you take pictures of the board as you're playing the tabletop game, and the enemy AI is able to make tactical decisions based on what's going on, so that it's not just random chance, it's not just attacking the closest enemy to you, but, like,
no, that's so, yeah, that was the thing about the random chance. So you on the hardest difficulty, is there more of that aspect then?
well, because he would get more attacks and he can't, like he can't attack the same unit like 4 times. It's like, "Oh, well, he can spread his attacks out more and, like, deal more damage across the entire party instead of, like,
Okay.
focusing on 1 or 2 units." So,
I see. That's
um,
yeah, the random
and I mean, like, honestly, if he was dealing, like, between if he depending on the units, obviously, it's like 10 clicks, I think, generally kills just about anything. So if he deals 10 damage, then, like, it's a one-hit kill on some of these units. So,
Yeah, and then again, going back to the AI thing, if I feel like these could be simple chips, especially if like the LLM is just a specific need. And then just thinking having some optical sensors in the eyes so it could see where the characters are that'd be a really fun way to do things physical. This is a chance to bring things physical again, you know.
I agree. I mean, one of my favorite games to play, and there's, like, obviously, it's based on the old Russian game of Werewolf, but, like, One Night Werewolf. Have you played that, like, board
I've
game?
I've heard of it.
Okay,
Yeah.
so, like, everyone gets a character card, and there's two werewolves among all the villagers. The way that they used to do it is obviously there would be like a game master that says, okay, everyone close your eyes, the werewolves open your eyes, you guys know that you're the werewolves. But it's even better now that they have the companion app that basically narrates it for you, and it's like, well, shoot, can't we have a companion app that does that for lots of other different type of tabletop games? We're a long ways off from being able to do that with like a full-on Dungeons and Dragons campaign. But I think something like this, especially if there were specific scenarios, like you said, a Baoku, Big Zam, maybe escaping Jabro. Like if
Oh
you don't
yeah.
if you don't get
Right.
out of Jabro before the timeline is up, then you get caught in the nuclear explosion. Kind of
That's a good
cool.
one. Yeah, because I have a whole bunch of different, unit types, even water. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, you know, that's
So
fun.
obviously, I'm very excited about this. Again, like you, I don't know what my opportunities to play are going to look like.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the
But
thing.
at the very least, I am going to try and collect at least a few of the units that I do like. The
Yeah,
fact that they do
for
have
sure.
that Witch from Mercury set that's got the Darabald um,
Fira.
and the Pharact in it.
Yep.
That's a good set right there. And
Yeah.
once they drop the Zeta, it's game over
Oh,
for me.
I know, exactly. That's the stuff. Yeah, the Zeta stuff for sure.
Yeah. Well, cool. I hope you guys have enjoyed this look into the
Yeah.
Gundam Assemble game. Again, we don't have a whole lot to go off of. Honestly, I'm surprised because when they did the card game show in Orlando last year, we had way more information. Um,
Yeah.
but you know, I think that they're going to try and slow play this because I don't know, and it seems like they're taking long because I remember they said that it was gonna be out in January this year. So
Yeah.
they've obviously already pushed back the release date, and I'm one of those people that likes to take that as a positive sign that they don't wanna
Right.
screw it up, like, that they're
Yeah,
actually taking their
exactly.
time with it.
They're doing it with the movie.
Exactly right. So, if we get that same treatment, that'd be good.
Yeah, I think so.
Cool. Well, hey, thank you for indulging me with this as always, Adam. I
Oh, yeah.
appreciate you.
Thank
And
you.
again, if you guys haven't checked it out, check out our chat about the Gundam movie news. Jason
That's right.
Clark being officially attached to the project over on Gundam Explained. Speaking of Gundam Explained, we've got the Gundam Explained show live tomorrow, as
Right.
well
Right.
as is it going to be Blue Gamer
No,
streaming
tomorrow is Gundam, yeah, in the morning,
tomorrow's
so I'll
Gundam?
do a little
So
quick
it's a
morning
two
Gundam show.
Gundam one day.
Yeah, I know, a lot of Gundam.
A lot of Gundam. But there's always enough Gundam to go around.
I know, I think I'm gonna play this game, Iron Saga, that has the Zeo Rhymer that's designed by the guy that did the Penelope, so, that'll be cool to
Nice.
check out. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys again so much for tuning in, and, catch us tomorrow. Until next
Yeah,
time, see you later.
see y'all.